Welcome to Gone to Texas, a podcast about AMC's Preacher. My name is Alex, and I have not read any of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
And my name is Nick, and I have read all of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
Today we will be discussing Season 4, Episode 5 of the AMC series titled Bleak City. While we will not be spoiling any of the comic and by extension any future plotlines of the show, we will be discussing the details of the series through Season 4, Episode 5, so pause this and go catch up before you listen to the rest of the episode. You can find more episodes of our podcast at g2tpodcast.com. We're also G2T Podcast on Twitter, and you can send feedback to g2tpodcast@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our podcast and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher so we can read them on our show. Send us corrections, observations, anything regarding Preacher or our podcast. And finally, if you enjoy this show or any other show on the Midwest Podcast Network, please consider heading over to mpn.bz/Patreon and pledge as little as $1 a month to making our network even better. Special thanks to Jason K. and Gojo, who have pledged at the level of $10+ per month. But I just will say, $1 a month might not be much to you guys. That's $12 a year. But to us, $1 a month can mean a lot. It means that there's another person out there listening that thinks the hours that we put into making these things matters to you, and that's a wonderful feeling. So
it's
please
true.
Consider, if everybody listening to this gave us $1 a month, we'd be having hundreds of dollars a month, maybe $800 a month. But
Yeah.
that's $100 more a month than we currently make.
Which is actually a big deal because you pay to host everything.
Yes, we are just about almost in the black on a monthly basis, minus all of the red tape that came before it.
Yeah, the 6 or so years of straight up out of pocket expense. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's okay. It was a startup cost, and I'm okay with that. But it'd be nice to know you're out there, and it would be great to receive the 70 cents or whatever Patreon would actually give us of your $1. So please consider.
So you have to do the math then. Whatever you have to pledge to get us exactly $1 a month.
$1 and
38
cents or whatever the hell it is. All right. So we did get some emails. We got an email. I think it's the first email this season from our buddy Mark. Mark wrote into us to say some words that I'm currently pulling up.
Good.
On my email.
Is that electronic mail?
Yes.
Wow.
Mark's electronic mail says, "Hi guys, I had a few comments about this last episode and your discussion. Yeah, the show seems a bit on autopilot, but we," and he says in parentheses, "my wife, daughter, and myself are still enjoying it.
Awesome.
I do think that this was the best episode of the season so far." Speaking of episode 4, I believe. Yes.
Yep.
In that it felt the most preacher-like. Like Nick, I thought the Jesse/Steve in the raft storyline worked really well. All three of us let loose a collective what the fuck when Steve pulled his arm out of the water and found his hand missing. For me, though, the Tulip and Jesus storyline was even better. I thought the chemistry between Ruth Negga and Tyson Ritter was perfect. Ritter as actual Jesus really works for me. Your extended discussion on Ritter as Jesus reminded me that he's in another AMC show at the moment, Lodge 49. It is not genre in any way, shape, or form, but it's got a really quirky, easygoing vibe to it with some interesting characters, including the one that Ritter plays. I also wanted to comment on the end bit where the Saint of all killers shoots his way through the core of the earth. As ridiculous as it was, I completely understand your problems with it, We all laughed at the sheer audacity of it. I have no idea how the Preacher comics end, and I'm not going to read any more of the books until the show is over. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the show is going to wrap up. Since I do intend to finish the books, I'll join in with the others and hope that you turn this podcast into one about the books. Keep up the good work." That's from Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
The kind words.
Good to hear from you.
Absolutely. I've been curious about Lodge 49. That's the one that stars Wyatt Russell.
Yeah, I
son of Kurt.
just pulled it up because the name sounded familiar, and it was the show that I thought it was.
Yeah.
The trailers for it were intriguing to me.
I don't remember seeing a whole lot from it. I saw maybe like some of the first ads when watching either Preacher or Better Call Saul or something like that. And it seemed intriguing, but I know nothing about it, so that might be a great way to go into it. I would like to give it a try at some point, but it's cool that Tyson Ritter's over there. You
Right.
know? He did a great job on Parenthood. I probably said that previously, but he basically plays a stand-in for. He plays the frontman of a band that's being recorded at the recording studio that Dax Shepard and Peter Krause's character own in Parenthood. And so he kind of plays a fictionalized version of himself in the All American Rejects, and it's fun.
That sounds
he
funny.
pokes a lot of fun at himself with it, and I think they have a good time. But no, I think he's great, and I think he makes a good Jesus. So
He does.
if
Oddly
not
enough.
necessarily someone you would look at and be like, hey, that's Jesus, I think he fills the role pretty well. So but yeah. No, and the Saint of all killers, you know, him shooting through the earth. There, I think Bruce brought up the idea that he made the elevator from Total Recall.
Yeah.
was one of the ideas. Yeah, I can't say that it's like so outlandish that it wouldn't work. It's just that I don't know. I just thought it was dumb.
Yeah, you don't need to justify not liking it.
No. But that's fair. We did have some more comments in our Discord, some of which were from our friend Joseph. Joseph came in. He said he had the good, the bad, and some random notes. This is all about this coming week. So I might come back to that a little bit later. And then Bruce also brought us some thoughts as well. But once again, if you give us the $5 on the Patreon, come join us in the...
Yeah, you can get right to that stuff yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And participate.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's awesome.
So we'll come back to those at the end of the show. So episode 5, this is the first time that I saw the previously on in the digital version of the show.
Yeah, same.
So I don't know if they've done that for all of the other episodes. I feel like that's usually a thing that AMC does, but this is the first time that they actually like felt a need to keep it in that copy that they put up.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was kind of interesting, but a little bit weird. But yeah, so the teaser. We open on the Saint having decimated the Australian Tourism Centre, and we see Eugene praying over the bodies of those who lost their lives. The Saint sits in the room waiting to hear Jesse use the word. Jesse's at a car rental attempting to make his way to the Lost Apostle when the stuttering clerk named Jackson receives a wanted notice for Jesse as he tries to rent the car out to him. Jesse manages to convince Jackson to give him a car of his own free will and uses the word to erase his stutter, which unintentionally provides the Saint with Jesse's location. As Jesse makes his way out of the parking garage, he gets stopped at the exit where he and Eugene recognize each other. As the Saint kills Jackson and steps outside, Eugene tells Jesse to go, and the Saint loses his bead on Jesse as Jesse rounds the corner to flee. More Saint and Eugene.
Yes.
Starting off there. I thought the slideshow of the Australian Tourism Center was pretty funny.
I liked it a lot.
With the rugby interspersed throughout of the beautiful scenes of Australia.
It was very Monty Python-esque to me for some reason.
Yeah, I get that. I was a little surprised that it didn't include more shots of like all of the things that would kill you in Australia, because I feel like that's kind of the American go-to of like, I guess that's my go-to, is like the spiders that are as large as your head. And
yeah, that's probably not what the
poisonous
Australian
things.
tourism would want to convey.
No. So, you know, the fact that they actually filmed in Australia, maybe they
it was funny.
They took a more tactful approach to it. But no, that was good. And the idea of like the Saint being this bringer of death while also having Eugene with him to kind of like
try to balance the scale.
Yeah, balance the scale or you know, just pray for the dead and kind of like absolve their sins and not necessarily absolve their sins because it's not like he has the power to do that, but just to kind of, balance it out, I think is an interesting duality, if not kind of a why.
Yeah, a bit of both of that.
But And so we previously talked about how we don't really know why the Saint wants Jesse, and we still don't really know that, but at least I think we saw a little bit of strategy behind him with keeping Eugene, and that he knew that Jesse would come back for Eugene.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true. And that's something that I think comes across in the book too, that the Saint is not stupid.
Yeah.
Although he has like this lumbering, unstoppable
blunt
force.
tool.
Yeah, he's not dumb. So yeah, that is true.
So I think that kind of at least adds a little more context to them being together and why they would put them together. But I think even by the end of this episode, we're still like, what's up with the Saint Jesse?
Yeah.
So
it's true. I did think for a second when we were getting the cuts around like all the bodies strewn everywhere, I was thinking this is as close to that ship scene as I'm going to get.
Yeah, we did just before we started recording. Bruce did chime in the no spoilers to say, also wanted to say that I've read the comics more than once, and this supposedly important panel of the Saint on a boat hasn't stuck with me at all. LOL.
I never said it was important.
I replied back.
It.
I said I don't think it's quote unquote important per se, just one that Nick loves. And then I posted. You did give me you sent the pictures of it to me last week, so I posted it in the.
Yeah, I love it, and I just think
Discord.
it's really effective. I think it does a lot with literally 2 pages, and it's fantastic. But whatever, it's neither here nor there.
Well, and the thing is, like, even looking at these pages, I can see it in film form.
Right.
Of, like,
oh, yeah.
Even if you, like, start at the wheel with the dude tied to the mast and you just start to draw out of the boat. Like,
if you read it in, like, a guided view, it's like watching,
like storyboarding.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I it would have been cool.
Yeah.
But
that's the byline for this show. for this season anyway.
Ouch. Yeah.
No, there's anything wrong with that. It's a good. I texted Alex before we can record. I was like, I liked this one. I did.
Yep.
I did like this episode. This is probably my favorite episode of this season.
Interesting.
Maybe. I don't know. I did kind of like the first 2. I don't know. It's already receded into the the crypt.
We'll reflect on the season later,
for sure.
I suppose.
I really love that Jesse apparently used his actual ID and credit card.
Yeah.
Somehow he has those still.
Yeah. He's had them with him all this time,
right?
And they're still there. And that part's really fun. Like, there are several times in this show where I think, like, how did they have the money to do this? But then I think you see Jesse using the word to do whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he told the dropship that flew Tulip's car over to the Middle East, like, hey, we're bringing our car, and it was fine. So you can explain all of that away, but then when it comes down to, like, oh, he consciously doesn't want to use the word and has to rely on the mechanics of everyday life.
I think not only is it a funny little detail that he like has it there and it pulls up Jesse's face and everything, but it's important to note that I think he's weighing the consequences of using the word more now after his whole experience with the pilot and the raft.
He's certainly thinking about it more.
Yes, he's not wielding it so willy-nilly, which is pretty representative of the comics. Like, he does really start to think more carefully about exactly how he's going to use it and when he's going to use it, if at all.
Well, and my whole thing last week was, did he learn his lesson? I think this is some proof that he's learned something.
And there are actually a lot of times in the books where, as the reader, you're like, dude, just use the word, man. Like, if I had that shit, I'd solve this problem right now with just an utterance. And he doesn't, I think, for a lot of reasons, but I think also he likes to make people actually earn whatever they've got coming to them, good or bad.
Yeah.
He doesn't really, I mean, he does use the word a fair amount, but it's not, he kind of uses it like a weapon, really. Like, you don't use it unless you have to. And he is already so considerably handy himself in just about every situation that he doesn't have to use it that often.
So we see him in this scene use the word to try and erase this guy's stutter.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph had a point. He was like, I wonder if the car rental guy was able to speak after Jesse told him to stop stuttering. It does sound like he says thank you.
I think he does.
There are the captions say that he says thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's very quick. But are there instances in the comic of Jesse using the word as like a reward or to help somebody in that way?
I wouldn't say reward, but he does use it to help some people.
Okay.
He uses it to right a wrong, big time.
Interesting.
At one point. And even when we see him in the show, though, trying to use it as a good thing, like the pilot, when he's like, feel no pain, it ends up costing him his arm and probably ultimately his life. But
yeah.
So I think he almost has a look
in
on
the first episode of the show, I think he tells the guy to show his mother his heart.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
he literally goes there and opens his chest in front of his mom.
Yeah.
You know, he has good intentions with it, but does it really?
And I think there's a look in his eye as he's about to exit. There's like a pause, like he's almost weighing, should I or not? And he's kind of thinking about exactly what he can say. And what does he say? He doesn't say stop stuttering. He says your stutter's gone, right?
I'm going to look it up right now because I think he says. Actually, I should probably have it written down here.
I thought it was more of a.
He said, "You don't stutter."
You don't stutter. Okay.
Were the words that he used with the word,
which I think is very deliberate word
phrasing.
Choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not you can't talk or you stop stuttering.
Yeah, the stop stuttering doesn't mean he literally can't speak.
Right.
You know, that type of thing.
It's just more of like a command. You don't stutter.
Because it is a psychological thing, even, you know, like.
Yeah, I guess if you believe you don't stutter, then you don't stutter.
Yeah. So, and it got worse as the man saw the wanted thing, you know, right? So it is like a nervous kind of. Yeah. So, yeah, not that we know literally anything about the mechanics of what causes stuttering in people, but.
No, this podcast is just really well edited.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I know all of the stuttering that I have. I don't know why it's caused, but it happens.
I think your mind works so much faster than your mouth. You're just already on.
That's a very generous.
You're on to the next sentence and thought.
Yeah. But yeah, no.
I liked that he did something nice with it, though.
Yes.
He's becoming more godlike with it in terms of he's trying to only do nice things, and even the way again that. What does he say? You don't stutter.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it felt sort of godlike to me, like the phrasing and the power of the command just felt more like something you'd read in like a scripture or something, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, and the fact that it was something that felt more carefully considered, as you said, rather than most of these times it feels like it's either something that he's angrily commanding or very hurriedly like trying
blurting
to
something out. Yeah.
So that was good. The other thing that I want to note here that's going to come up in a second too is that as Jesse pulls out of the garage, we see this garbage truck speed by, and it happens to him again at like an open crossroads in the next scene. Personally, I felt like that was a little bit of God intervention.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So like, especially the way that they frame both of those moments.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this comes out of nowhere.
Came out of nowhere. Yep.
It causes Jesse to see Eugene or go back for Eugene in the second case. So that it's like I'm looking for these moments that they're kind of presenting as outrageous.
It's clever because the garbage truck one is initially fine. Like that happened and I was like, okay. And then the second one is literally out of nowhere. Like he checks the intersection and there's nothing there. And then and at that point I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Little on the nose with that one.
But what was really cool about it is that I feel like the language of the shot, like the very clearly the mise en scène of that moment communicated that to you, on top of the fact that it was a clear open intersection, no buildings anywhere. He would see this gigantic car coming.
Just barreling down the road.
Yeah. It was cool that the way that they framed it was very much indicative of that similar moment earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
So
I really liked the split screen moment
with him and the Saint.
Yes. That was really cool.
Yeah, and I feel like it's weird to me that it took to now. I guess maybe I can't necessarily remember in season 2 and 3 if we ever got any real confirmation of it, but it's weird to me that it took till now for someone on screen to acknowledge the fact that the Saint hears Jesse use the word. Because that was something that we theorized as to how it was happening, I think due to some of the events in season 2.
Yeah.
But the fact that last episode, I think Eugene, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago, I don't necessarily remember, but Eugene Eugene actually commented on it. It's weird to me that maybe they felt the need to explicitly state it.
Yeah, maybe.
But but to actually see it in effect, I think was also
it was cool. This episode felt to me like the first real time this season that somebody showed up to direct this shit and be like, hey, let's make this cool. Except, you know what? I take that back because the fight scene in Jesus Desaad's place was clearly very carefully considered.
Yes.
So I take that back. But as a whole, the episode felt a little more handcrafted the way that I expected from this show. Like we were talking about earlier this season, that some of the previous seasons felt a little bit, they were handled with a little more care and a little more thought was put into the way everything was shot. And this really felt a lot more like that to me.
Do you feel like episodes 1 through 4 were maybe the like course correction and we need to set things up for the end of the series? Like maybe it was just them trying to manipulate things into place to put all the chess pieces in the right spots and get to the finale that they want to get to.
Yeah, that could be. I think that there were still plenty of opportunities to make some more cinematic moments, which is a phrase I'm sure that I'll overuse in this episode. But it's not that they weren't there. There were plenty of really striking shots, but they just didn't feel the same as, like, especially seasons 1 and 2 seem to have these moments where I would just want to pause it and just look at the screen and be like, that is nice. Like, I really like the way that's all laid out and blocked and executed. And this season just hasn't really had too many of those moments for me. It feels like the content is there. Like, there's still lots of good stuff, but it just feels kind of like they were just more worried about what was on the page rather than what was on the screen. Like, we gotta get through this, and maybe the back half of the season we'll have a lot more visual consideration.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I liked it, and it was nice to feel like I was watching Preacher again. It's kind of how I felt.
No, I think that's very fair. I think that's
But the split screen is just a simple thing that right away I was like, oh, I feel like I haven't seen something like this in a minute. That made me kind of go like, oh, cool. I feel like I'm watching a movie.
Yeah.
Not a TV show.
Yeah.
No slight against TV, but I think we can all agree in the last decade, 15 years, TV has elevated to the same level, if not a little bit, in instances beyond movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when shows I know are capable of rising to that level, when they don't, I'm kind of like, all right, that's fine, but let's
you're
better.
not like at the strong point of like, that the crest of the show.
Yeah. And I know that obviously scheduling and all that in TV is very different. Like, they're oftentimes just struggling to play catch up and to stay on schedule because it's so much content.
Yeah, the interesting thing that I'll say is that it looks like, looking on Wikipedia, episodes 1 and 2 were directed by John Grillo, episodes 3 and 4 were directed by Kevin Hooks, and then episode 5, was directed by Jonathan Watson. So, and they don't have directors listed for the rest of the episodes, so I think that's been something that's been coming out over time. But like the idea that, and honestly, now that I'm looking at this, maybe this has something to do with like the weird out of time feeling that I'm having, is like maybe these two directors were given these 2 episodes to shoot and they shot things the way that they needed to, and then in the editing room things became apparent that they wanted to try to maybe hide some stuff or hold this for there and move things around a little bit to try and spruce up some of the storytelling, and clearly for me it didn't really work. But
TV is interesting like that too, how they'll bring in directors that I would think they hire them because they have a style and a sensibility that they like, but they have to conform to the showrunner and to the greater show.
Yeah.
And some directors are probably not as successful as that as others. I'm thinking episodes 3 and 4 I liked better than 1 and 2, but there were things in 1 and 2 that I did like. But overall, those were the ones, especially where like when the story was just dumb. Like Cassidy,
yes.
as Cassidy calls attention to in this episode, he's basically like, that was stupid.
That was dumb of
me.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And we're like, great. I'm glad we spent 4 episodes of Cassidy just getting his dick repeatedly trimmed.
For a joke.
For as you said last week, for a circumcision joke.
Yes.
For a foreskin joke. That's what you said. You know, the classic reach in the bin of foreskin jokes. What do we got?
Yes.
Oh, just this.
Yeah. notable here that John Grillo did do some episodes of Preacher last season, and he was also in the additional cinematography or additional photographer of Westworld for several episodes. So little crossover there.
Yeah, it's a fickle gig being in TV like that. Some people they kill it and they're awesome, and when I see certain TV directors' names attached to things, I'm like, oh, cool.
Well, and the Preacher, let me say here, the only director credits he has on IMDb are Preacher. It's 3 episodes of Preacher, 1 from last season, and then 1 and 2 from this season. So people have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's interesting that if he was like a second unit director or something on Preacher, that they would be like, okay, you seem good enough.
Yeah,
do these.
Well, and yeah, it doesn't. I mean, I don't even necessarily see him there. He was a cinematographer for 19 episodes of Preacher, director of photography.
Oh, so he's a DP turning director.
Yes. So
interesting. Yeah, that transition doesn't always work for people. Wally Pfister. That list can stop there, and it's fine.
Looks like he also DP'd several episodes of Westworld season 3, as well as Westworld season 2.
You know, they're very different.
And he's
skills.
also doing the Snowpiercer TV series as DP. So,
yeah.
All
right.
Yeah, we'll see more of John Grillo in the future.
Did he shoot those episodes of Preacher also? Was he the director and DP?
No. Interesting. No. So he was DP for a few episodes in season 3, and then directed one of the episodes of season 3, and then it looks like he hasn't DP'd for any of season 4 yet. So. Anyway, lots of
interesting
director talk. Is this an episode of director talk?
I think it is.
Anyway,
welcome to director talk.
So, on to Act 1. Jesse continues to head out of town, but stops at a crossroads where he almost gets hit again. But then when he decides to head back to get Eugene.
I forgot to say that I really liked the sequence of Jesse pulling the car out of the garage. It went on for so long.
It did.
And I was like, this is a problem. I don't know why this is happening. It's very poorly done if they're trying to ratchet up some tension or something, because it was traveling very slowly. And then I thought, is it for a laugh? I couldn't understand why this was unraveling the way it was, but it was making me laugh.
Here's what went through my head as I watched it, because I was kind of like, he gets into the wrong side of the car first, which is funny,
right?
But then he gets into the other side of the car, and then I thought about it. I was like, man, for Jesse Custer to just come in and know how to right side drive, like, I feel like I would need several weeks of like thinking about.
I've
driving
actually
on
asked
the right
people
side
about
of
this.
the road. Yeah,
they say it's actually really, you acclimate very quickly.
Okay,
I think probably because you have to.
Yeah,
but. I recently asked somebody about this who was in Europe, and I was this is how interesting I am. It's one of the first things I asked, like, what's it like driving this on the road? Yeah, was it hard to get used to? Because I'd imagine the same thing.
Yeah,
it's not the driving; it would be the turning. The turning is what would really screw me up, because I would want to like make this really wide wrong turn onto the wrong side of the road.
Yes,
but I guess left turns become easy.
Yes,
and right turns are more complex.
Yeah,
which is so weird. But. The first thing I thought was like comic Jesse would 100% complain about this. He would say this is stupid, that the wheel's on the other side. He would for sure.
What a dumb idea.
He would say the wheel's on the wrong side of the car. He wouldn't say like, oh, it's a different side. He would call it wrong. And he would be like, this is dumb. Well, I half expected TV Jesse to kind of snicker at it or like make some other remark like wheels on the wrong side of the car kind of thing.
Or just to kind of scoff at it when he sat down on the wrong side of the car at first. The other thing, yeah, I have to agree with you. I don't think the tension really, like, the Saints coming for him, right? But
yeah, I just didn't understand. It felt like it was not either for a laugh or to be tense. It was like this weird middle ground. Yeah, I couldn't figure it out, and it was making me laugh just because it was so bad. Like
it would have worked just the same if they show him getting into the car, switching seats, and then finally just pulling out and the garbage truck runs by like that. That's what it could have been.
I actually wondered again. I was like, is this just for episode length? Or are they just like, we gotta get this episode 40 seconds longer? Do we have more footage of him driving in the garage? Just pad this scene out.
I think it was a missed attempt at trying. I think what would have been cooler, now that you bring up the split screen.
Yes.
What if they did a split screen as the Saint is making his way?
That would have been really awesome.
That would have been great. So
it would have tipped. I mean, we knew he was coming, so
Yeah.
at the same time, it's not, but that would have been so much cooler.
But
I never even thought of that.
Seeing the intersection there, like even if they split it, they split it lengthwise so that you have like a horizontal of Jesse driving through, and then you see the Saint like walking along the street to get to the.
That would have been really cool.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Oh well. AMC, let us know when you want to adapt Preacher again.
Yeah, this has been an episode of Director Talk.
All right.
Talking how we would direct.
Back to Act 1. Tulip and Jesus arrive at the Holy Bar and Grail Motel to find Cassidy there, now blonde, and drinking at the bar. Tulip and Cass catch up, being very sweet with each other until he confesses he told Jesse they slept together, and Tulip punches him. Meanwhile, Jesus plays Asteroids. Cass's angel friend requests a shower shit and a shave, as well as a phone to call a certain lady. The angel and Jesus seem to recognize each other, but they don't make anything of it. Kamal shares Jesse's news story with Tulip. Featherstone offers her life to Star for all of her mistakes, but he gets interrupted before he gets to take it from her. Star learns Jesus has escaped on top of Tulip, Cassidy, and the angel. He hands the gun to Hoover, too, to kill Featherstone, but Featherstone leaps out of the window and escapes with her wingsuit. Star heads down to the squash court to beat Hitler for disobeying orders, but he asks what Hitler thinks of Humperdoo, and Hitler clearly lies, and when Star leaves, he grows angrier. We already talked about Jesse stopping at the crossroads.
It's funny because with the trucks thing, I just had the note that says God likes using trucks, and I was picturing God with his toy trucks, like he had all the models and stuff. Just being like,
yeah, it'd be interesting to go back to see if there was a garbage truck there. Like, I feel like there could have been.
And what other stuff might be there.
Yeah.
A shark.
Or the lifeboat or something like that.
Australia.
Yeah. Yeah. Cassidy's hair. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it because the show's not making a big deal out of it.
I think there's something more to it.
Okay.
After you initially didn't think so. I was like, well, and now that the show has just breezed by it, I'm like, okay, wait, what? I mean, there has to be. People don't just
It seems like something they would cut back to, right?
Yes.
At this point, the way that they've been weird about it this season.
I'm betting something happened, and we're not going to get to see it until it becomes relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That's fair.
I don't know if he's a vampire anymore. Like I'm wondering if the angel did something to him to purify him or something. This is not coming.
Purified him in the waters of Lake Minnetonka.
Yeah, they visited Lake Minnetonka. Clearly, this is not coming from comic book world. By the way,
this is Nick.
This is TV.
Show Watcher Conjecture.
Yes, is this an episode of Show Watcher Conjecture?
I believe it is.
All right.
Yeah. No, but part of me thinks Bruce is right because I asked in the Discord as I was watching the second time around, or I thought I asked about it. I don't know. I know I talked about it a little bit last week, but yeah. So I said, anyone think they'll come back around to Cassidy's blonde hair, specifically how it came to be? And then Bruce responded back and said, I'm wondering if Joe just randomly changed his hair between shooting days and they had to roll with it.
I
also
wondered,
seems potentially
if that
true.
was for a role, maybe, or something.
It looks like his haircut is something that he's wearing in a different show that I should know because I was literally just looking at the IMDb page for it. Going to Joe Gilgan's page here. It's called Brassic. It's a new Sky TV series that's airing in the UK. He's got that short, like, I'd want to call it a bowl cut, but
it's not blonde.
Yeah, it's not blonde though. That's the weird thing. It's like why did it become blonde? I wonder if we'll come back around to it. We'll see. Like it's played for a joke a little bit, and he just says, like Tulip says, "What happened to your hair?" And he just says, "Oh, hurtful."
Hurtful.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and because he plays it for a laugh, because Cass does, Tulip does too, because she's like, Cass. Like she probably figures he just went and dyed it for fun, and I think there's more to it than that.
Yeah, like to her,
it's like the same hue as like the angel's hair.
Yes, but also the thing is, like, they catch up, and they catch up with each other about what happened in the rest of season 3. Like he's talking about les enfants du sang.
Yep.
You know, les enfants, les incompetents, and she's talking about the what did she have? He comments about how it's nothing compared to.
Yeah, I don't remember either. She killed a whole bunch of people or something. I don't remember now.
I might have it on here. No, I don't. I didn't bother to.
But yeah, so they're catching each other up.
They catch each other up on
events.
Stuff that happened in season 3. So like for all she knows, his hair's been blonde for.
That's true.
A long time, but
she saw him in Masada. They saw each other.
That's
in
true.
The elevator.
Yeah, you're right. So forget what I just said.
I almost forgot that. To be honest with you.
No, you're right.
Fever dream of Masada.
So yeah, that's pretty strange to me, but maybe we'll come back around to it. I feel like it's something that'll be an opening credits. Like it'll be the teaser in a week or two from now.
Maybe. So they see Jesse on the news. Is that right after that?
Kamal shows the owner of the motel shows Jesse the new story that they filmed about Jesse to Tulip and Cass, and that transitions into Featherstone.
Yeah,
in front of Star.
I really liked the VO from the news story saying a group of innocent sex tourists.
Yeah.
And then they go out to try to paint Jesse as a vigilante killing sexual deviant tourist.
Yes. Yeah. No, it reeks of it's like everybody was hired there to die by the Grail, in order to to just get murdered. But yeah,
I laughed so hard at the like maid coming to clean up Jesus' room, and when she says "Good morning, Jesus," I lost it. This is literally the first. I think. I guess I can't say literally for sure, but I'm 99% sure this is the first episode I watched, and my wife was in the room.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Imagine her confusion at this show.
Yeah.
Coming in at this point.
No,
she was like, "What is going on?"
I feel like I recall you saying there was a particular scene last season where she like caught a glimpse of it and
probably.
was like,
I think there have probably been one or two moments that she has been passing through the room or has been on the couch on her iPad or something, and she just glances up. But this was a funny one.
The good one. Yeah, the involvement of Jesus is just
it really raised an eyebrow. Like I glanced over at one point and she was on her iPad and she was staring at the TV and she looked back at me like with this wide-eyed look, and then she just went back to her iPad, like just not even going to talk about it, but just to let me know that this was strange.
That's funny. I will say just another side note. I brought up my boss's boss at work is he's diabetic.
Big boss?
So yes, my big boss at work. He's diabetic, and we always talk about like pop and what pop is good and stuff like that. And he of course also holds Diet Dr. Pepper among the best because it in what he said today, it tastes more like Dr. Pepper than Dr. Pepper does.
Oh, well, that doesn't make any sense.
But I told him today, I was like, I don't know if you know anything about the show Preacher, and then I told him about the joke of God saying, "Ah, yes, my greatest creation," and he started laughing. He's like, "That's fantastic." So
now you've converted him into watching the show.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, started season 1 for this joke in season 4. It's worth it.
Yes.
You got to see all of it for it to make any sense. That reminds me, I saw online. It was on Twitter. Somebody tweeted and said they are trying to cut down their coffee intake, or cut it out entirely, or something like that. And they said, I need a new hot beverage to substitute it, but I can't drink tea because it apparently causes kidney stones or something like it. There's something about most teas that can, if you're prone to that, like the minerals can gather up.
Okay.
Anyway, so basically anything but coffee or tea help. And I was like, well, you're just screwed. But a lot of people
hot water with a lemon.
Yeah, well, a lot of people were saying, actually, it was very interesting. I read a few interesting tips, and I was like, some of this sounds pretty good. I kind of want to try it. But one person said hot Dr. Pepper. And somebody else was like, yeah, like seconded. And somebody posted like an ad from like the 60s or something of like a snowman with like a saucepan heating up Dr. Pepper. Apparently hot Dr. Pepper is a thing.
So we have to prepare some hot Dr. Pepper next week, is what you're saying.
It seems like if it wasn't the dead of summer here, actually this week has been very nice.
That's true.
For the first time in months. It seemed kind of like it's some kind of cold remedy to not a remedy, but like kind of the way we in Michigan use Vernors for stuff.
Okay.
Maybe the rest of the world uses Dr. Pepper, but I've never had hot Vernors, but I guarantee I would love it.
Hot Vernors is okay. It's still just as carbonated, so you get the fizzy. All I'm thinking of right now is putting some, like, we're going to have to convene on the next 90-degree day and put some Dr. Pepper in the back of a car. Because I can't imagine actually heating up Dr. Pepper in like a microwave or on a stove.
No, definitely not the microwave. I think if you heated it like low in like a saucepan, like soup, I could see it being good because it's pop is candy, right? It's just liquid candy, so
warm sugar.
Well, yeah, right. It sounds
warm sugary beverage.
It sounds fine. I bet if you heated up some Dr. Pepper or some Vernors and just poured that shit over some vanilla ice cream, it would be so good.
Probably.
It would probably be so good. Anyway, apparently, if you
Boston latte.
Ooh. If anybody out there of the three of you that are listening to this insane discussion have had or heard of or know someone who has had or know someone who has heard of hot Dr. Pepper, let us know.
Yeah.
It does. I probably literally raise an eyebrow, but not like in a sarcastic way, but like in The Rock kind of way, kind of like, oh,
yeah.
Like I thought,
intrigued.
That sounds kind of good. And I don't even. I like Dr. Pepper, but it's not like I just don't drink that much pop. So.
Dr. Pepper's not one of my favorites, but
it is definitely the only thing that will do when you're craving one, though.
Yeah,
it's not like I want a Coke and like Pepsi is fine because it's a cola or like some other off-brand cola. But it's like when I want a Vernors, that's all that'll do. When I want a Dr. Pepper, that's all that'll do.
Mr. Pibb is very good, though.
It is.
Mr. Pibb, doesn't have his doctorate, but it's still very good.
He is just a mister.
Yes.
He must own some land or something.
He got I wanted to say disbarred, but I don't know what the word is for the medical.
I do know that word, but I can't think of it right now. It's something in that vein.
Excommunicated. I don't know what it is. Yeah. Write in with your Vernors heating tips or whether you know what the term for losing your medical license is.
Or if you know what Vernors is.
Yes.
I don't know if it's...
I feel like we've talked about Vernors.
For sure.
And yeah.
If we haven't, what have we been doing?
Yes.
Talking about Mr. Pibb and Dr. Pepper too much.
Featherstone's wingsuit again, great.
Dude, it's the exact same shot. And it is hilarious.
That was the first thing I was like, this must be the exact same shot. Dude, and that's so good.
It killed me. I was laughing so hard. I love when shows do that, whether for a joke or not. I think it is so funny when they're like, let's just, do we have another shot? I'm like, hold on, look at. No, what do we do? You just use the same one. No one will notice.
Yeah.
Or if they had tried to like invert it, would have been really funny, just to like make it seem like she's coming from the other side of the screen. It's the reason why Too Many Cooks is so funny.
Yes.
That one sequence with like the Falcon and then like the Pentagon or whatever is so funny because it's just that repeated. Or like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the shot of Lancelot running. Mm-hmm. It's like it is so jokes like that kill me. I don't know why. It's like the dumbest. It's probably the dumbest thing I laugh
totally
at.
agree. I totally agree. Because it's something that would go over everybody's head. But if you're paying enough attention to it, you're like, that is literally the exact same shot.
And it's like the lamest thing. Like, didn't she have another take?
Yeah, it's like they couldn't. Yeah, they didn't. Like, there's so much special effects there. It's like, yeah, they didn't spend the money on it, but also like,
I'm sure that
I feel like they could have just dragged her a little further on the green screen, or like just it feels like there's so many things they could try just to like make.
They may have
actually
shot that. It looks very real, and maybe they only had one take. Maybe they're like, this stunt person is only going to do this wingsuit thing one time. We've only got the one. What do we do? Well, use it again. What else are you going to do? It's hilarious.
Yeah,
I thought that was
very
so
good.
Funny. I mean, the fact that they even bothered to include it was funny.
Yeah.
She jumped out the window, and I was like, all right, she's fine. And
they could have just looked out the window and showed like her gliding away. But
just take that shot and size it down to the window.
Yes.
Just shoot the plate of the window on a green screen and just put it in there as the star is staring out at her flying away. Oh, my God. It was so funny.
The only other thing also going on here, I don't know if you have any other thoughts about Star and Featherstone or the cast and Tulip stuff of this act.
No, don't think so.
I don't really understand. Like, I guess Star was called about the fact that Hitler went in to see Humperdoo, and And we don't really get the indication whether or not it's real Humperdoo. It was real Humperdoo, which was a question we had after last week.
I think we still don't know.
We still don't necessarily know. Hitler clearly lies about how majestic he thinks Humperdoo really is. But also to have Star beating on Hitler. I don't know how you've, like, if that, what your kind of, like, conception of that was. Because to me, like, the idea that this dude on Earth is going to beat up the dude in charge of hell was really weird to me.
Yeah. You know, it didn't bother me. Actually, I kind of liked it because I think that one thing that Preacher does a lot, and I'm going to actually bring up this specific point later, is taking these, like, larger than... This is a tricky thing to say about Hitler.
About Hitler in particular,
yeah. But like taking these characters that are like mythic in our own minds and like reducing them down to humans again.
That makes sense.
Because Hitler obviously committed atrocities and was one of the worst, if not the worst, person ever. But he was a person. And the idea that even when he's in charge of hell, he could be beat about by Star is really funny to me. Like I just think that the fact that Star is... I mean, he's Star. He's not afraid of Hitler. He's not afraid of anybody.
That's true.
So
and we see Hitler get picked on in hell was one of the things, right?
He's kind of a pushover.
Maybe I've kind of like let that... I haven't thought about that in a little bit, and that's why it felt so weird to me.
It was also kind of satisfying just to watch somebody slap Hitler around him.
True.
Like, yeah, even if it's Star. Yeah, I'll take
and then him getting angry about it, too.
Yeah,
was like...
just being bullied.
All right. But it seems like he could be building to a breaking point of some
kind. The
what
thing
that
I
means,
thought...
Who knows?
You know, this is the only time in this show that Hitler has been relevant. And I was like, you could have literally just had when Frankie Toscani is walking down the hallway and they're like, oh, the emissary from hell is here, and Hitler walked by. That could have been the introduction of Hitler in this show, and it would have been just as fine as if he had never been in the show for these past 2 seasons. And it would have worked fine. If not, better. Dude. If not better, because you would have been like, holy shit, Hitler's in this show. And he's not being played for laughs every episode and making me just grind my teeth like, what is this? Because I still am failing to see what the hell the point of all that was. You're not going to make Hitler sympathetic. You're not going to make me empathize with Hitler. You're not going to do anything to his character.
The saint killing the devil has no bearing on anything at this point.
That could have happened too.
True.
And never shown Hitler and just be like, well, who's in charge of hell if the devil's not? And then he shows up in this season, oh, of course it's Hitler.
Yeah.
And now put him in the exact same spot with Star beating his ass, and you'd be like, oh, Hitler's a bitch. All right. That's what the show is doing with this person.
Yeah. That makes a much clearer thesis, I suppose.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Is this an episode of Oh, well? I got to stop.
And like 2 references back to Hitler's, like, what turned him into Hitler that we saw last season or 2 seasons ago.
Yeah. You know, and I was thinking about that earlier today, too, because with all of the Eugene stuff that we will talk about, I was thinking about Eugene when he's in hell. I was actually more prompted by the gift that I sent you earlier of Eugene on his bike.
On his bicycle, yeah.
Yeah, I was remembering what hell is, like reliving like one of the worst moments or the worst moment of your life. And I started thinking about the Hitler one, and I was like, yeah, I still don't know what the hell the point of all that was. So, whatever. Cool.
Yeah. All right. On to Act 2. As Eugene prays over another corpse, the saint waits to hear Jesse use the word. Jesse uses it at a construction site to take command, so the saint starts heading there. Once inside with Eugene, Jesse hits the saint with a wrecking ball full force. Eugene and Jesse attempt to run for it, but the saint is still hot on their trail. Cassidy is remorseful for the fact that he feels like it's his fault that Jesse is a wanted man. He pledges to go after him when Tulip decides that that's not what she wants to do right now, and she offers Cassidy a ride while she and Jesus head to Vegas. Later, a conversation with Jesus reveals most of his quote-unquote powers were indeed just metaphors, and while he's in town for a quote-unquote conference, it's not really what he wants to be doing. Jesse luring the saint to the construction site was cool.
I really liked this
watching
sequence.
It through the gate. Kind of a good way to hide the, like, we probably don't actually have a wrecking ball here.
Exactly.
Like,
or the money for anything more than like one Bobcat that went by.
Yeah. And I thought it was a great way to do it.
I actually really liked that. Yeah. That was the opposite of the parking garage thing. I was like, this is really effective. And I remember thinking that at the same time, I was like, this looks cool. This is a clever way to hide exactly what Jesse's up to, and it's a good way to work with the budget that you have. I don't even know if the fence was real.
Yeah, it might not have been.
I think it was animated. There was a moment later where it looked pretty janky.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I think that they literally just shot Dominic
plastered
Cooper.
that on top of Dominic Cooper on a green screen or something.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. It felt very Breaking Bad to me, of like you don't really know what's going on here and why we're here yet, but as the scene goes on, you kind of
put it together.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought that was really cool.
I liked that a lot. That's another thing in this episode that stood out, and I was like, okay, this is neat. Some thought. And
a little more ingenuity with the lack of budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was pretty good. This is where Cassidy admits that he's like, what the fuck was I doing in episode 1?
Yeah.
And we agree. And but Tulip and Jesus, I think, is the heart of this act, and kind of, I said last week I'm excited to kind of learn what the show's thesis on Jesus is. And
the Jesus thesis?
Yes, the Jesus thesis. Is this an episode of Jesus thesis? I hope somebody out there is listening to you talking you two to me, or are you talking
understands the joke that we're making. No, this is not our joke.
we are not geniuses. It's all Scott Aukerman and Adam Scott. It's Adam Scott Aukerman. But the idea, and I guess more of this comes later on when they're smoking the joint in the car, but the idea that Jesus is this like rebellious teenager who still respects his father.
He's like pre-rebellious. He's like the early stages of acting out.
Yeah.
And he almost does, and then he doesn't.
Yep.
And I have some thoughts on that too later.
Yeah. So
later.
And I really, the thing that I kind of respect as someone who maybe once thought of himself as an atheist, but now thinks of himself more as like an agnostic, or, you know, that's another conversation for another. As somebody who was once a Christian, or a Catholic rather, and is not really that Catholic anymore, the flat out like kind of, yes, we're just going to have this iteration of Jesus say, oh, that was metaphor. Because that's kind of something, even when I was Catholic, I was of the mind of like, well, this is all metaphor, right? And who knows?
It's like I think it's in Dogma. I don't want to misappropriate this brilliant piece of writing. I think it's Dogma. When they talk about the loaves and the fish, and Jesus multiplying the loaves and the fish. You know that story?
Yeah.
That he didn't actually do that. It's just that everybody was really selfish and was keeping it for themselves. And when they saw that people were willing to share what little they had, they suddenly were pulling out like, oh, I have a loaf and a fish too. And really everybody had it all along. It was
being
communal and helpful. And so in a way, Jesus did multiply them by getting everybody, but he didn't,
showing everybody not to be assholes.
Right, but he didn't literally like multiply
that makes sense.
The bread. And I think it's in Dogma. I wish I could remember exactly. Somebody will, I'm sure, point it out in the Discord or an email later. But anyway, I always thought that was really interesting. And it must be Dogma, because I feel like I saw it at an age, I was probably like 14 or something, when you're really starting to like be critical of those when you're starting to be critical of everything and starting to really wonder, like, well, is that the case, or, you know, is that true, or does that make any sense? And I think I don't want to say I think it's funny, because I don't, but I kind of do, when people take the Bible verbatim and think like everything in it literally
don't acknowledge the fact that it could be a metaphor, a fable, or like anything of that,
or even just a game of telephone that's been going on for 2,000 years.
Yeah,
like people can misinterpret things, and people can do
like the idea of something being lost in translation. Like, this is like the worst case scenario for that. It's like dead languages, and like
people can't even remember the story that they read on Facebook, which probably wasn't even true in the first place. Like, we live in the ultimate era of this thing where
there's even receipts to go back and look at it. But yet this stuff was passed down over thousands of years and is somehow like the letter of the law.
Right.
Interesting. But that being said, like, to have Jesus himself kind of acknowledge, like, well, you know, I wasn't I wasn't making water into wine. It was a metaphor, like that type of thing. I think it's weird. It's not really something that I feel like I've encountered, and maybe I am not thinking of other portrayals of Jesus, but honestly, I feel like it happens so rarely.
Well, yeah, I think that's valid, because usually when there's religious comedy involved, Jesus is not looped in.
Yeah.
Usually Jesus is kind of like, we don't touch that. Like Life of Brian, we'll talk about the guy who's mistaken for Jesus, and like in Dogma, you've got pretty much every other religious figure is lampooned, but there's not actually Jesus there. And the only on-screen portrayals of Jesus I can think of are the ones that are very serious.
Yes.
Like in all the big epics and that kind of thing. He's not a character that's really used comedically, and I don't think they're necessarily. I mean, he is obviously being used comedically in the show, but they're also not being disrespectful.
No.
They're trying to just humanize him a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because, yes, he does say that he's like, I couldn't actually turn water into wine. At the same time, he is the son of God, and he says it. He's like, yeah, that's my dad. Like, he isn't not this like divine being, which is so interesting. I think that the way they play with that is really funny. It's a
very good balance, which is not what I expected out of this show. You know?
Yeah, like I said, I was 100% floored by the inclusion of straight up Jesus.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's becoming one of my favorite characters is really odd and refreshing.
Yeah.
Again, like there was a moment when he was I know this is jumping ahead, but when he's sitting in the back of the car and they're having that really funny high conversation. And like again, my wife was kind of looking at me like, "What the fuck? What is this?
What is this?
Is that Jesus?" Yeah,
you've been talking about this for 4 seasons.
You kind of. This is what you do on Tuesdays.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's funny. I would love to talk to this show about more, or talk to the show. I love to talk to more people I know about the show, but I just don't really know that many people.
No.
In my personal life that are watching it or have even read it.
Yeah.
Even my friends that are huge comic book fans, there's only a few that I know that have read it. And
we got to talk to Lance. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, Lance is a busy man nowadays, but we're all busy people.
Well,
but Lance is also a busy man.
Super busy. I mean, Dave Steele. We don't really see Dave Steele that often.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's great that he's read it now. We just have to get together. We have to have just like a preacher summit and just hang out and talk about it. Maybe after you've finished the books.
Yeah.
We can do that. That'll be the carrot on the stick, and we'll just go for it.
The preacher summit.
Yes. And and I think part of the reason that it's such a great book and the show is fun to watch and talk about and think about is just that to me that the topic of religion is endlessly fascinating. Like every single person I know in real life who is or isn't religious at least has some opinion on it that is formed out of their life experience, and I think it's always fun and interesting. I shouldn't say always, because sometimes it gets a little crazy. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying.
2010 Alex is probably much more of an asshole about it than 2019 Alex. So
it's pre-podcast.
That's discovery of Reddit, Alex.
When you're automatically subscribed to
our atheism, which is not the case anymore. And also I don't subscribe to it on my own thing. But anyway. Yeah, and they want to head to Vegas, which is fun.
It is funny.
And the idea that they just like get in the car and start driving, like they're gonna drive right to Vegas. I don't know. It's just kind of funny
non-stop.
To me. Yeah.
We're in Europe, no big deal.
Yeah.
Walking the earth.
Okay. Act 3. Cassidy's angel friend tries to talk to Cass before Cassidy's angel friend tries to talk Cass into going for Tulip despite her being a quote-unquote forbidden love. Cassidy mostly rebuffs him, but not before the angel's date shows up. The angel and the woman share a nice dance number set to Queen's Love of My Life, and at the end we see the woman is actually a devil. Jesse and Eugene break open a car in order to get away from the saint. They take a breather, and Jesse offers a fairly heartfelt apology to Eugene. Eugene mostly accepts it when Jesse kicks at the dash to try and hotwire the car. Jesse fails and sets off the alarm, so they both jump out. So, listeners, this will be a little bit weird. There's a little bit of a break here. We talked about the angel, and there are some potential spoilers for it. So we're going to cut out everything we just said and put it after the outro for this episode. If you are not worried about spoilers, if you've already read the book, I think you can go on and listen to it. If you're a little bit more worried or gun shy about it, I'll just have to say the thing that I know, I don't really know that it's going to be a crazy reveal in the show, and I'm not even really certain that it's where they're headed with it. But it might be something cool that you might wish you would have not known. So, if you would like to hear more about the angel, please listen on after the end of my outro, where I say go forth and speak the good word. But other than that, we both like the dance sequence.
Yep.
With the angel and the demon.
Uh-huh.
And what I will say out of the discussion that we just had is that Nick had a great point about the fact that the angel and Cassidy share somewhat of a kinship in the idea that they're both kind of outcasts in the society that they currently live in, or they both have been kind of, at least, we know the angel's been thrown out of heaven. We know that Cassidy sees himself as this outcast and kind of lonely on the planet, and I think they have a bond over that, especially being in the cell together. So I think the show does a good job of putting those two things together. Any other thoughts on that are, we could touch on in the non-spoilery section of the show?
No, we'll come back around to the angel a little bit later.
Okay. And then Eugene and Jesse's apology to Eugene. I thought it was a good apology, but I also kind of like the thing that they do with this is you get these real genuine moments from Jesse, or what seem like genuine moments of like goodness and repentance from Jesse, but then he goes to hotwire this car.
Yeah.
And then shortly we will discuss Jesse knocking out the police to steal the police car. And it feels like some of Eugene's turn here is kind of informed by some of that. I don't know if you got that feeling or not. Like, Jesse delivers these very nice words, but then he kind of sees Jesse's actions. I don't know if he kind of wonders whether or not Jesse's really being genuine, or sees that, like, this preacher is also fallible. Like, it seems like there's more at play there, especially in just that juxtaposition of Jesse's nice words and then Jesse's bad actions.
Right. Yeah, I think that's valid.
I do really love the apology. I thought it was great, and Jesse finally reckoning with this moment from season 1 was kind of great.
Yeah.
To come back 30 episodes later and finally have him like process what he did and realize it and think about the fact that like this kid had his preacher send him to hell. Like, I thought that was awesome, and I thought they did a good job of portraying that.
I agree. I liked it a lot. It felt like almost more of a catharsis for me as the viewer than Jesse even. I was like, oh, finally he has to deal with this.
Yeah.
He has to look this kid in the eye and tell him, I'm sorry I sent you to hell.
Yeah. And I think it's another good stepping stone on the way of Jesse learning from the lessons that he had on the last episode as well, Finally putting everything together. I think it's great. All right, Act 4, as Tulip and Jesus wait for Cassidy outside of the motel and smoke a joint in her car, Jesus explains his predicament and the creation of Humperdew. I don't know if I wrote this very well. Tulip almost tells him that Humperdew is nothing special, but Jesus has heard from his father that Humperdew is the best. The angel and the devil are loudly having sex above the bar as Cassidy tries to decide whether or not he should exercise his free will and try to help Jesse. He tries to illustrate his point with Star Wars, but Kamal has never seen it. Tulip and Jesus drive off, but as Jesus envisions robbing a bank with Tulip, he realizes this life wasn't meant for him, so he has her turn around. The angel and demon come downstairs, and the angel talks to Cassidy. The angel didn't expect Cassidy to stick around, so he pulls out his sword and throws it at the demon, but the demon reinvigorates and comes back after him. So we talked a little bit about the conversation in the car. The interesting thing to me was this, like, Jesus really relates the idea of he has this great mistake in his life, which was having this child. And I think he kind of sees that as his one failure that he did. Like, that was, and I guess that's maybe the way they portray it in the show, because I think he goes to get executed that same night, or at least he gets taken by Pontius Pilate, or however that all went down.
What's your impression of who exactly Humperdew is? I mean,
in
what is Humperdew?
To me, Humperdew is this, like, really, I don't see Humperdew as Jesus's child. I see him as this, like, long lineage of inbreeding. Like, that's what he's always seemed like to me.
Okay, good. That's what he is in the books, and I was concerned because doesn't Jesus refer to him as his son? Doesn't he refer to Humperdew as his son?
That's what he says. And so
Jesus, someone is mistaken here. Someone is being lied to or telling. Jesus might actually think that Humperdew is his direct son, in the same way that God thinks Humperdew is fine. It makes me wonder who actually knows.
Who knows what Humperdew is? Does God even know?
Whoa! I'm not sure.
What the fuck?
This is an episode of What the Fuck? Because when Jesus said that, I was like, oh wait, what?
I didn't think about that at all.
Because Tulip is about to tell him too, like, that God is an asshole. Or she does tell him, like,
eventually she tells him God is an asshole. But right here, she's about to say Humperdew is, like,
not what you think he is.
Yeah, exactly. Because part of me was thinking it was this weird malicious act from God to, like, spite Jesus.
Right.
Of, like, he loves Humperdew more than me kind of thing.
And that could be. That could very well be the case. That could
still potentially be the case. But you are, I think you might raise an interesting point of, like,
if I remember correctly, I don't think God really cares about Humperdew in the book, because Humperdew is just like a symbol, basically. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
He's not going to wield any power effectively. He's just kind of there.
Yeah.
And the real power will be whoever is behind Humperdew, Star, or if Star gets his way. Ultimately he wants to replace Humperdew with Jesse.
Yeah.
But whatever.
No, I think that's really interesting. Like, that, because we had the questions of, like, how omniscient is God and Jesus in this world. We are seeing right now that Jesus is not omniscient.
Yeah, he's essentially a figurehead also.
Yeah, there's no way that he has seen the Humperdew that we've seen and thinks that. Who knows? Who knows that dynamic?
Right.
So that's really interesting. You blew my mind a little bit.
Oh, good.
And I'm kind of like, I don't. That's good.
Okay.
That's good. I'm curious what other people think of that too, because I feel like there could be another reading that we don't necessarily see too.
Very likely is.
Yeah. We do get a lot about free will this episode. I think this is the second time that it's brought up, with Cassidy kind of ruminating on whether or not he should be going to save Jesse.
Like Han Solo.
Yes.
I love that conversation. That was really good.
It was very good.
And he was like, you know what I'm talking about.
I did quote that out. He said, that's free will. Free will says I can change. Free will says I don't have to be the selfish arsehole that no one believes in. I get to decide whether I want to be the hero here or not, just like Han Solo, you know? Luke's my friend and he's in trouble, and I don't have to give a shit about the chest full of rebel gold. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to help blow up the Death Star. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I love when he's like, you know what I'm talking about? And the guy's like, no.
Yeah. He says moving pictures are an affront to Allah. Pretty good.
Yeah, I'm starting to get more on board with Cassidy being this way, as long as he follows through on it. I think.
Okay.
But still got 5 episodes.
We'll get there, maybe.
Yes, 5 more episodes.
Jesus robbing a bank, that vision, I thought was
funny.
fun. And Jesus kind of like getting the jitters during a bank heist.
Yeah,
and
Jesus just walking around with a shotgun.
Yeah, and he's not wearing any different clothes.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody knows it's Jesus.
That's Jesus. Yeah, because the guy on the floor is like, Jesus, I have to pee.
It's very good. Very good. And then we've got the fight scene between the start of the fight scene between the demon and the angel.
Yes. So this whole dynamic is really interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm based on the spoilery type things that we talked about that if people keep listening can hear at the end of the episode. Rolled in with kind of what the angel means in the book and how he is characterized. I don't know what is the thesis here.
So you still don't think, even with this like new presentation of the angel outside of the cell, we're still not like fully on track with the angel of the books?
Well, no, not even that so much. I mean, yes and no. It's dovetailing closer to it than I thought it would, but at the same time, it's not. Because I'm wondering what is the point of him talking to Cassidy about this forbidden love and all that, and saying he loves her, and then just proceeding to try to kill her and getting into a fight from which it seems like there will be no end.
Yeah, exactly. How does either one of them get the upper hand in the situation?
Well, yeah, and not only that, like that, it kind of brings up the question of why bother. But what does it mean? Like, what did you get anything out of it in terms of like is the overall message that you have to do? I think this does run hand in hand with Jesus too, with Jesus abandoning the fun trip and instead going to the conference. Is part of the theme of this whole episode and maybe going to become the overall bigger theme of the show, just that you have to fulfill your intention or your purpose or your duty.
Even if you try to deviate from your true nature, do you find your way back?
Yes, and even if you want to deviate, do you inevitably have to choose what you were meant to be doing?
I think, yeah.
I just feel like there's more. The show is asking a bigger question other than just being like, hey, you want to see an angel and a demon fight for a while?
Yeah, and I think you're right. We see Jesse turn around to go back for Eugene. We see Tulip come back after some prodding from Jesus, who also goes back. And Cassidy also making a choice to...
That might be why I was left this episode with a really good vibe off of it, because it does feel more cinematic. It feels like a movie watching all these different characters have to make essentially the same decision.
It feels thematically in sync. Like everything is kind of on the same frequency. Even though everybody's apart, we're still experiencing similar feelings and similar, like, we're seeing the same logic applied in a lot of different situations, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, I can totally get behind that. And I honestly, if there's anything throughout my now 7 years of podcasting that I hate about myself, it's that I feel like I am horrible at finding the connective tissue thematically in literally everything. I think there are moments of divine intervention, so to speak, where like it gets through to me and I can see it all. Mm-hmm. But I also really envy, who's great at it. I think you're great at it. I think Willie's great at it. I think Tim is a genius at it.
Yep.
And it's an incredible skill that I wish I really had.
Tim and Lance are the two people I know best.
Lance is,
that can cut through to the heart of what a story is about faster and more effectively than anybody else.
Yeah, no, like that's the kind of thing where it's like I watch Fight Club 30 years later and I'm like, oh, I get it. So like it's
30 years later.
I'm glad that you found that connective tissue and presented it to me as well, because I think when a show does that right, a lot of times it goes unseen by most people who are watching it, but they feel good about it.
Right. And honestly, that's the ultimate, is when it's being done so well it's not calling attention to itself.
Yep. And I this episode I think does a great job of that.
Sometimes when it calls attention to itself, it's fine.
Yes.
I'm just looking at this Tron Legacy poster and thinking about the multiple times
Yeah.
where characters directly grab you by the ear and say, "This is the point."
Yeah.
But sometimes that's fine.
Yes.
It works in like a big piece like that. But
for something like Preacher, where we're in the 4th season of a show that really the only people who must care about it, I think, are people that have to have read the comic and have not been bucked by the adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like this is the time where that type of masterful weaving of these things together really shines.
It really called attention to itself because the angel's behavior runs so contrary to the book. Like I said / will say, and this is not one of the spoilers, but he's very kind of cowardly in the book and very like kind of pathetic. And that's the way pretty much all the angels are presented in the book, is that even though they are supposed to be these incredibly divine heavenly beings, they're often just as pathetic as humans. Which again even furthers the whole main story thrust of Preacher, of just like, who are these guys and who put them in charge? And why do they think that they get off
why
light?
are they above us?
Exactly.
Yeah. And
I just found it interesting because you could kind of see something's going to happen when he walks up to Cassidy. He's kind of like, why are you still here? There's like this vibe of like something weird's about to go down, but it's not what I thought. And when he started fighting the demon, I was like, huh. And that's when I started to ask the question of just like, well, what is this saying about him if all he wants to do is just bang his demon love? And even Cassie's like, I thought you loved her. And he's like, oh, I do. Like, he does love her, but he's committed to destroying her anyway. But she's a demon. It's kind of the funny line. And I was like,
Well, and I guess in the end, like, I don't know, does he think that at some point, if he's able to vanquish this demon, does it redeem him?
Well, or so we're talking about all these. Is it maybe raising the question of doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Right. But like, is Jesse going back for Eugene the right thing? Is Tulip going back to help rescue Jesse the right thing? Is Cass not pursuing Tulip romantically the right thing? Is Jesus going to the conference the right thing? But maybe but then the angel trying to kill the demon, is that the right thing? Or is the message that you ultimately will default to your true self, no matter what? In this case, it happens to be the angel wanting to kill the demon because he's an angel. Is it Jesse going back for Eugene because he feels bad for what he did? Is it Tulip going to rescue Jesse because she loves him and is as angry as she is at him and doesn't want to? She's going to have to help him. Is Jesus's role to bring about the apocalypse? And what the hell is Cass going to do then? Because we just don't know. We know he's going, but there's not a clear path in sight for him yet still, in terms of what he does with Tulip.
Other than the glimpse
Jesse,
forward that we kind of...
Which I'm not even sure is real anymore. I don't know. But yeah, if that is true, then he ended up defaulting to his true nature, which is to do the wrong thing, basically. To not be the hero, to not be Han Solo. I don't know. That's why I asked, what does it mean to you? And I think it was a great way to end the mid-season, essentially. To now halfway through the season, it really left me thinking for a while about, like, what did that all mean? What is the question it's asking, and how am I, as the viewer, going to choose to answer it?
It's very good. No, that... I guess, in what you're saying with all of those stories, like, is there something even deeper of, like, does everybody have that question about them, like Cassidy, of, like, are they returning to their true nature, and what is that true nature?
Mm-hmm.
We see so much of Jesse in the beginning of the series wanting to be a preacher and wanting to be a good preacher.
Yes.
And thinking that the word is going to make him the best preacher, right? And so him going back to get Eugene is it, as you said, because he feels bad about Eugene, but does it really, like, in the end, is he still serving himself somehow?
Right. Just trying to make himself feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very good. A+.
Oh, thanks. I'm just a guy asking a question. Guy with a microphone.
I think it's a good question.
I just really appreciated a lot of things this episode did.
No,
that was probably the biggest one. And I would not have thought if you had told me, yeah, that angel's going to end up fighting a demon and they're going to just keep on reinvigorating over and over and over into a set piece. You're going to love it. I'm like, no, I'm not. You must not know me.
but it was good. All right, let's go on to Act 5. Jesse knocks out some cops to steal their cop car to get away from the Saint. Eugene seems reluctant to join, but he grabs something off of the cop and gets in the back of the car. Jesse notices Eugene is awful quiet, and Eugene reveals that Jesse's apology didn't make him feel any better, so he shoots Jesse, and the car comes to a stop in the middle of the road. Jesus tells Tulip he's sorry about Vegas, but she understands. She makes sure that he knows that his father, God, is an asshole. She also remarks that just because Jesus is doing the right thing doesn't mean she has to, but Jesus turns it around on her and almost makes her believe in doing the right thing again. Cassidy walks past the chaos in the bar with his red sunglasses and scarf to head outside and find Tulip waiting for him. They hop in the car and head to Australia together. Jesus returns to the conference to find Star and Hitler quite close to each other as they waited. They begin the conference. Finally, Jesse gets out of the car, but Eugene is right behind him, explaining that a bullet to the head should be an apology about being sent to hell. Eugene rolls Jesse over to reveal the Saint standing over him. I didn't really love the Eugene stuff that much this episode, and I feel like this turn doesn't make sense to me right now.
I would agree.
Like, it felt like we were getting there, and I think if we were going to get there, if we picked up this season and Eugene was pissed at Jesse, great. But that's not where we started. And
it's not where we started this episode.
No, and it feels weird and not well considered. It's the least well considered thing in the episode of things that were considered quite well, as we've just kind of gotten through. But any thoughts on it? Like,
no, it feels a little too early for me to even really speculate on or bother digging into. It's such a like cliffhanger-y thing that I'm like, it's not. We'll
talk about it next episode.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess that's the thing, is like, I feel like we will come to a head on why does the Saint care about Jesse very early next episode, I hope. So we'll see.
Yes, we're heading for a showdown in these three.
Yeah, Jesus and Tulip, great as always, as we said.
Yeah, they're really fantastic together.
It's kind of sad that they might be done for the season. Who knows?
Yeah, I liked. At the same time, I kind of like it that it's almost this weird, self-contained little story that they have. And I do like the way Jesus turned it around on her and was like, "That's true. Like, you can do whatever you want."
We come back to the free will thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, there's a little inkling of that. I think that Jesus being like, he has a little bit of that, I think, almost irritation that I think the angel should have with like humans.
Yeah.
Like, you can do whatever you want. Like, the way Jesus kind of says it is almost like sarcastically. Yeah, you can do whatever you want, and like God's going to be okay with it. Is kind of the subtext that I was kind of bringing to it as well, but it might just be me.
No, I think that's there too. I think that's pretty good. Cassidy's red sunglasses. I thought was pretty good. I didn't actually notice it the first time I watched, but when I watched again and I saw that they were red when he walked out the door, I was like, nice. Good little touch.
Yeah. That whole sequence of him walking out was cool.
Yeah.
It was another one that I was like, okay, this is neat.
Mm-hmm. Some slow motion, several
feathers flying everywhere.
Similar dead bodies all over the place in different positions and things. Yeah, absolutely.
And the final shot of the angel like leaping up to like hit her in the background was really cool. I was like, oh, that's neat.
Yep. Yeah.
It's cool. We're making movies again.
The conference with Star and Hitler and Jesus.
I love the nameplates.
Yes.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
It's very Grail.
Yes. The bureaucracy of the Grail shines through again.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus not wanting to shake Hitler's hand
I'm
and
glad
then
that they
giving
did
him
that.
a hug. Pretty good.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing to me was the fact that like Star is like sitting right next to Hitler, and it's kind of like it feels like when Jesus walks in that room, you know where the allegiances lie.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm still really curious what this apocalypse plan even is, and why people care about it, and what it means for heaven and what it means for hell. Like, we know what it means, and it's an influx of people to both of these places probably, right? But in the grand scheme of why is it a topic of discussion now and not,
because of when the show is airing.
Yeah.
It's oddly
well timed. Yeah. But yeah, and then the episode ends with Eugene and the Saint. So
yeah, I mean, we're left with a lot of hanging threads at the end of this episode.
Yeah,
stuff that I think we'll pick up in the next episode.
Yeah. Real quick, I wanted to go over some of Joseph's thoughts in the Discord. He said, I really liked the apology scene with Eugene and Jesse. I was very interested in who Jesus is as a character and what is going on with him. Cassidy's discussion of free will and Han Solo was nice. And it was also kind of cool to see Jesus and Hitler, the best person in history and the worst, facing off. Agree on all those points. I thought those are all good as well. The bad. He says the bit with the angel and his lover felt like it could have been a lot more interesting. Maybe, Joseph, after some of the thoughts that Nick dispensed, maybe you might find differently with that. Please let us know. He also said, in the bad, I'm at the point where I resent any time the plot intrudes. Eugene shooting Jesse, the Apocalypse 2020 plan, whether Jesus planted or grabbed something in the hug, that's all much less interesting to me than the character moments. I thought that was really interesting. Like, the idea that the plot is intruding. I wonder how much of Joseph's feeling on that is brought on by listening to us, because that's very much how I feel about I know we're headed towards the end. I guess everybody knows we're headed towards the end, but like this detour of okay, we know Jesse ultimately at some point falls out of a plane. Yeah. So,
or does he?
He's not going to die from this gunshot, right? I don't know.
I would agree with that assessment. I can understand being
frustrated.
Yeah. I think that's how I felt for a lot of, the show really, but also this season. But I did like this one a lot more. I don't know. Yeah,
he also had some random notes. He said it seems like a major goal of Tulips is just to have someone to hang out with. She and Jesus also have just crazy chemistry.
Absolutely.
Agreed on both points.
I like to think we'd all have chemistry with Jesus.
True. Jesus has the ultimate chemistry, really.
Is there a chemist term for some sort of chemical that reacts to everything?
Well, I mean, it's like a free radical, Something having free electrons is always very reactive. I can get really nerdy here.
I was gonna say I have the
that whole first column of metals on the periodic table are all extremely reactive with water. So if you throw anything from lithium, potassium, sodium, all the way down to cesium and rubidium into water, it explodes. Explodes. So Jesus is like a what's the name of that group? It'd be an alkali metal, I think.
Alex looks so pleased right now. He loves this.
Yes, an alkali metal. Jesus is an alkali metal.
Excellent.
Yes. And we are all water. So
our bodies are what percent?
80% water? I don't know if that's actually true
Jesus
anymore.
would react with all of us.
That's probably made by the Water Council in the 1950s to get more people to drink water. Big water out there.
Now, these days, people say, well, I already have 80%, so I don't need more water. Big water. the conglomerates over at Big Water.
Joseph had one other point. He said, in hindsight, the show never really convinced me that hell was much worse for Eugene than Anvil, so I don't really get an emotional support for how mad he apparently is.
That's a great point, too, actually.
Fantastic point. Absolutely. A few more things from Bruce. He said, I mostly like the episode. Once again, it's better than 1 through 3, but still not great. Curious about that. He says, I think Jesse the Saint and Arseface stuff started out very well, but it kind of went off the rails for the sake of a cliffhanger, and maybe it was just to get a shot of a gun toting Arseface a la the comics in before they end the show. Sure.
Yeah.
Tulip Cassidy and Jesus plus special angel and demon guest stars fared much better, even if it was just a lot of character moments and no real plot progression.
That was okay.
It was just fun to see these three interact and talk. Ritter is actually a fairly decent actor, too.
He is, yeah.
The Grail stuff here was just even if Star viciously beating Hitler with a racket was hilarious. And was it just me, or did they blatantly reuse footage from the season premiere when Flufferman jumped out the window?
Yeah, there it is.
They did. Overall, I'm curious about the Apocalypse plan, but I feel like we could have gotten to it a bit faster. And then he says, as a side note, one thing I like about the season compared to the last two is that Hitler actually feels relevant and like he has something resembling a point. Granted, it's not much, but it's something. Nick also
let it be known, I read none of this feedback. We're just all in this together.
Yeah, we're simpatico. We're all here. So, yeah, no, I don't know. When you texted me that you liked this episode, I think I responded to you that I was like, I think I did too.
Think you did too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was, as I told you, the idea that like thematically I could feel like it was there, but I didn't necessarily see the pieces all in front of me. So, no, it feels good. It feels better than I feel. More satisfied with the show and more satisfied with our show after this episode than any of the ones before this. I
agree.
Not that we've been doing a bad job necessarily, but in some ways, garbage in, garbage out with this kind of show. I think, and like a little bit at least. So,
well,
no, but we've come a long way from falling down the side of the Grand Canyon like Homer Simpson in the first episode of this season. So.
Yeah, it feels like a lot longer ago than it was, too.
Yeah.
The last few weeks have been really busy.
They have. They certainly have.
It feels like we're like on episode 10 or something.
Yeah.
Instead of 5.
But it also feels weird that we're halfway through the season.
I know,
too,
yeah. Like
so.
when I pulled up the episode on the app, I was like, oh, man. This is it, halfway.
Yep. So 5 more to go.
The middle of the end.
Yes.
It's no longer the beginning of the end.
No. All right. Once again, you can find more episodes of our podcast on g2tpodcast.com. We're also on TV Time, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play Music. We're G2T Podcast on Twitter, and you can email us at g2tpodcast@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our podcast and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher so we can read them on our show. Send us corrections, observations, or anything regarding Preacher or our podcast. The Midwest Podcast Network has other shows about video games, horror movies, FX's The Alienist, and HBO's Westworld. Find out more about these shows as well as how to support the network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Our theme music is the song All In by The Red Thread, and it is being used under a non-commercial Creative Commons license. Don't forget to stick around after this line here if you want to hear a little bit more about some thoughts on the Angel this episode. But that's all for this episode of Gone to Texas. We can't wait to see what next week's episode of Preacher brings. But until then, go forth and speak the good word. All right. This is hard for me. I don't remember what we've said in the past. And I know that I have seen some things, and I don't know if they are based off of comic book knowledge. But the nature of the relationship between this angel and this devil looks like it's been something that is maybe linked to the generation of Genesis. I don't know if I want to cut this out or not. Like, So I've seen some things online of people maybe discussing that or thinking about it, and I don't know if they know it from. And I feel as though we have talked in previous episodes about the fact that Genesis is born of an angel and a devil. I'm almost 100% sure we have, actually.
I think that sounds right.
And to finally connect the dots, so to speak, I don't necessarily know what the best way of talking, if we should talk around this at all,
really
is.
There's only 5 episodes of this show left. For those of you that didn't know.
So we have to be getting somewhere along these lines.
I don't know if that's what the show is going to do, but it does seem like it.
Yeah.
There's enough on the screen for you to, I think, infer that on your own. We know that the angel was cast out of heaven. Yes. He does say that. He talks about forbidden love, and he says, it got me cast out of heaven. He says something else, too, about, he says like 2 or 3 things all kind of in the same thought that are bad as a result of his forbidden love for this demon.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have that written.
So you know that, and I think when he and Jesus
see each other,
they share that glance. They know, and I think the angel turns away because he's ashamed. And I think Jesus doesn't pursue it because he knows, like, I'm not supposed to talk to that guy, kind of thing. And
interesting.
The angel has retained his abilities, though. He
has his wings.
He still has his wings. He still has his sword he can pull out of nowhere.
He reinvigorates.
So he still is an angel. He just isn't allowed to be in heaven.
Yeah.
So.
And I should note that the Featherstone calls him a political prisoner.
Yes.
In when she's talking to Star. So it's like they give him this angel from heaven for a reason. Did they take him when they found him? Who knows?
I think it because thanks to the opening crawl, we know that they're not done with Masada.
Yeah.
So I think they will be back, and I had imagined that the angel is going to come back into play. The way we leave this episode, it makes it seem like they might be walking away from him, and that's it. I honestly thought that they were not going to do this with the angel, and the fact that as soon as he said he had that date, I was like, what? And then when she showed up, I was like, what? And I was like, oh my God, they're going for it. So in the book, the angel is the prisoner in the cell. The angel was cast out of heaven, but his characterization is very different. And he did have an affair with a demon, which is why he was cast out of heaven. But he is not like cool with it, and he's not like, he doesn't have such a sort of cavalier attitude about it all and about life. He's not ready to just go do shots and whatever and just like have fun.
So in the book he's ashamed of the fact that he's done these things, or he's like one of my favorite things about Preacher, and I know that sentence is incredibly open-ended. It really does a good job of showing all of these heavenly and hellly all these heaven and hell people, entities, bodies, whatever you want to call them. It makes them extremely fallible. And the angels are particularly interesting because they are all just as tempted by everything on earth as humans are, if not more so, because they're not allowed to do it. Yeah.
Because they're
meant to be above it all.
Yes, they're meant to be above it all, but they're also very jealous of humans. And that comes across in the books that they're like, I don't remember which angel character it is. It might be Fiora de Blanc, but one of them gets pissed at one of the humans and is like, we don't like you guys. Like, God made you in his image, and he loves you. You're his beloved creation. No matter what we do, no matter how good we are, and no matter how good of a job we do defending heaven, it's never good enough. And whatever sins we commit will not be forgiven because we're supposed to be better than that. And they're like kind of pissed, and it's really good. It's really compelling because then they're like, you humans have it made. You could do whatever the hell you want. And if you repent, if you feel bad enough about it and you tell God you're sorry, he's going to forgive you because you're his children. And the angels are like, that's a raw deal for us kind of thing. It's really, really, really good. And so this angel, I don't really want to talk too much more about it because I don't want to spoil anything, but the characterization is just very different. Either this angel has just made peace with the fact that he's damned, sort of. Yeah. He's been cast out of heaven. He's lost it all. Because at the same time, as tempted as the angels are by everything on Earth and as much fun as they're having on Earth, like Fiora and DeBlanc are very different in the book, and they're just kind of doing everything, and they're digging it.
Yeah.
They still all miss heaven at the same time because heaven's paradise, and everything's perfect. And they're like, they realize that the high, they have the inverse of like what I think humans think of what their life is for. People, they're young, I think, have a lot of times, this is obviously isn't the rule, do a lot of bad stuff, make their mistakes, and do whatever they do. And then as you get older, you start to feel, you have more perspective, and you start to repent a little bit for maybe, and you focus on like, you know, maybe what's next. And the angels are kind of the opposite. Yeah. They get tempted by that stuff. And then it is kind of like humans though, where like the high wears off, the fun wears off, and they realize like, oh, I'm ashamed. I feel shame for what I did. And they miss being in heaven because they never felt that way before. Yeah. And so I think the angel in the show might have just, like I said, more made his peace with that. And he's like, you know what? I did the things that I did, and they got me cast out, and I feel regret. He's kind of like Cass almost in a way, where he like is not yet ready to actually change. Yeah. He like knows he's done bad things, but he's not quite there yet. And Cass in the show is now at that point, I think, where he's like, I want to try to do the good thing, the right thing for once. And this angel's kind of in this weird mid-ground. He's almost like the heaven version of Cass. Like they have kind of a similar frequency.
A similar kinship to their station in life, I guess, right? Or at least what they've done. And
yes, they're kind of on the same wavelength. And I have just a little bit more to say about the angel and the demon later with some of the stuff that happens. But the dance was an interesting little sequence.
Yeah, what did you think about the involvement of Queen? I know you're a big fan of Queen.
It was cool. Yeah. I thought, I was like, man, how do they afford Queen? And I realized, because they picked that song.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that I've ever actually heard that song. But
that's the cool thing about Queen. They have so much material that most people don't know. I mean, obviously their greatest hits albums are just like ridiculously stacked. Yeah. But they have a lot. That's from Night at the Opera, I think. And that's a really cool album. But yeah, anyway, it was cool. It's a cool sequence.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if anybody feels as though that like putting that together. Like I hope nobody feels spoiled by that. I don't know. Now I'm kind of torn. I think there's probably a way that I could edit this where it just kind of is a conversation about the angel.
Why don't you take this whole chunk and put it at the end? And you can say something like there are potential spoilers, and
that's a good idea.
Listen on if you want.
That's a good idea. All right.